Have you ever been told you weren't enough? That you needed to be more or less to be worthy of love? This is a story for anyone who has ever been left in the rain, both literally and figuratively. A story about a betrayal so deep, it didn't just break a heart, it forged a new one in fire and ice. This is the story of Raina. The rain came hard that night, as if the sky had decided to cry for her. It wasn't a gentle, romantic patter against the window pane. It was a furious, lashing downpour that threatened to drown the city. Each thunderclap felt like a punctuation mark on the end of her world. Raina sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the emerald silk dress she'd bought for his promotion dinner. The one he'd told her, just a week ago, made her look like something out of a dream. She had spent hours getting ready. The dress, the subtle smoky eye, the way she'd pinned her hair up just so, leaving a few tendrils to frame her face. She'd wanted everything to be perfect. The table was set with their best china, the silverware gleaming in the flickering light of the tall, elegant candles she'd lit 2 hours ago. Now, the wax had pooled and solidified, dripping down the sides like frozen tears. The food, an ambitious coq au vin that had taken her most of the afternoon to prepare, sat congealing under a glass dome, a monument to wasted effort. She had waited 3 hours. 3 hours of checking her phone, of rehearsing her proud, beaming smile in the reflection of the dark window, of the hope inside her slowly curdling into a cold, hard dread. Then the distinct sound of a key in the lock. The front door opened, and in came Leo. He didn't look tired from a long, unexpected meeting. He didn't look harried or sorry. He just looked distant, detached, in that terrifyingly calm way people look when they've already made a decision and are merely going through the motions of delivering it. He didn't even take off his coat, didn't glance at the table, the dead candles, the dress she'd worn for him. He just stood there, water dripping from his trench coat onto the hardwood floor. "Raina," he began, his voice flat. Her name on his lips had never sounded so cold. "Leo, what's wrong? I was so worried. Did something happen at work?" He exhaled, a short, impatient sound, running a hand through his rain-dampened hair. "No, nothing happened at work." He paused, his gaze finally settling on her. But it was like looking through glass. "I don't think this is working anymore." The words didn't compute at first. They were syllables, nonsense sounds in the quiet room. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice small, a child's voice. He shifted his weight. You're a great person, Raina. The best. But I just don't feel it anymore. You're not enough for me. I need more." Her heart skipped once, a painful, arrhythmic jolt, then sank like a stone into the icy depths of her stomach. "More?" she repeated, the word a fragile shell. More what? More laughter? More dinners? More of her love? She had given him everything. He looked away toward the door, as if already planning his escape. "I met someone." That was the part that really did it. The part where the room tilted on its axis and everything slowed to a nightmarish crawl. Her mind, usually so sharp, so logical, tried to reject the information, to find a loophole, a misunderstanding. Met someone? As in, a colleague? A friend? But the silence that followed his statement was thick and heavy with too much truth. It was the silence of a verdict being passed. He didn't apologize. He didn't reach for her. He didn't explain. He just turned, walked to the bedroom, and emerged moments later with a pre-packed suitcase she hadn't even noticed was gone from the closet. And the door closed with a soft, definitive click. Raina didn't scream, didn't throw the cocoa van against the wall, didn't run after him into the rain to beg. She just sat there, still as the grave, still as the rain now easing outside, watching the ghost of the man she thought was her future fade from her life. Something inside her, the part that believed in forever, in shared dreams, in you and me against the world, cracked so quietly it almost felt like peace. But it wasn't peace. It was numbness. And numbness, she would soon learn, is a far colder and more desolate country. The days that followed felt like walking through static. Colors were muted. Sounds were distant. She moved through her life as a ghost in her own skin. She went to work at the marketing firm, smiled at clients, took meticulous notes in meetings, met every deadline with robotic efficiency. Her boss, Gabriel, a man with kind eyes and a sharp business mind, had clapped her on the shoulder once. "Glad to see you're doing okay, Raina. Knew you were tough." If he only knew. The toughness was a veneer, a sheet of ice over a bottomless lake of grief. She went home to an apartment that was now filled with a silence so heavy it could suffocate her. It wasn't just an absence of sound. It was an absence of him. His booming laugh, the clatter of his keys in the bowl by the door, the sound of him humming in the shower. Everywhere she looked, he was there in the coffee mug with the chipped handle from the time they'd moved in together, the faded band t-shirt he'd left hanging on the back of a chair, the carefully curated playlist of their songs they used to dance to while cooking dinner on Friday nights. But the thing that hurt most, the wound that festered beneath the numbness, wasn't what he took. It was what he left behind herself, hollowed out and utterly unsure of who she was, without the reflection of his love. For 6 years, her identity had been intertwined with his. Her ambitions had been tempered to fit his schedule, her opinions softened to avoid arguments, her social life molded around his friends. Without him, she was a bout line with no one to color her in. And then, as if the universe had a cruel and impeccable sense of humor, she saw him again online. It was a late-night, wine-fueled moment of weakness. She typed his name into the search bar, and there he was. Photos. Dozens of them. Him with a tall, willowy, picture-perfect woman named Vanessa. Vanessa with her mile-long legs, champagne blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, perfectly straight, brilliantly white teeth, and an influencer's practiced flawless smile. They were everywhere. At exclusive dinners where Vanessa's dress probably cost more than Raina's monthly rent. At glamorous rooftop parties with the city lights glittering below them. On weekend trips to tropical locales. The captions were all heart emojis and gushing declarations. Stole my heart, Dow. Found my forever. She's my everything. Raina tried to tell herself it didn't matter, that she was moving on, that his new, shiny life was a facade. But every time her phone buzzed with a social media notification, her stomach twisted into a nauseating knot. She found herself scrutinizing the photos, zooming in on his face, searching for a hint of the uncertainty she felt. She found none. He looked happy, content, validated. Because heartbreak doesn't just break you, it rewires you. It installs new, insidious software of insecurity and doubt. The message, "You're not enough," became a constant whispering echo in her mind, a soundtrack to her loneliness. A month later, the fog was just beginning to lift, replaced by a low, simmering anger. She was channeling it into her work, becoming sharper, more ambitious, less willing to compromise. That's when Gabriel walked into her office, a thick manila folder in his hand. "Raina, got a new account," he said, his tone buoyant. "Big one. Huge. Hartwell Development Group. The client's expecting a full rebrand campaign for their new luxury condominium project presentation in 3 weeks. I'm putting you in charge." She felt a prickle of familiarity at the name, but pushed it aside. There were lots of developers. She flipped open the folder. Her professional curiosity piqued and froze. The name on the front page read, Hartwell Development Group. CEO, Leonard Hartwell. Leo. The blood drained from her face, leaving her cold. Her throat went dry as dust. This is his company," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Gabriel frowned, leaning against her doorframe. "You know him?" She hesitated, her mind racing. She could refuse the account, cite a conflict of interest. But then she would have to explain. She would have to say the words out loud. "He left me for a blonde Instagram model and told me I wasn't enough." The humiliation was a live wire. No, she wouldn't run. She wouldn't give him that power. "You could say that," she finally managed, her voice regaining a sliver of its strength. Gabriel's face broke into a wide, encouraging grin. "Well, all the more reason to nail this project then. Show him what he missed out on." He had no idea how prophetic, How perfectly vengeful that sounded. The first meeting came faster than she expected. Boardroom on the 32nd floor of the new downtown high-rise Leo's company had developed. The room was a testament to his success. Floor-to-ceiling, glass walls offering a dizzying view of the city, chrome details, plush leather chairs. The kind of money that hums in a silent, powerful frequency. Raina dressed for war. A tailored navy blue suit that screamed authority, her hair pulled back into a severe but elegant chignon, her makeup minimal except for a slash of deep red lipstick. Elegant, sharp, untouchable. She was no longer the girl in the emerald dress waiting by the window. She was a principal at a premier marketing firm, and he was the client. When Leo walked in, surrounded by his sycophantic entourage, it hit her like a physical blow, a memory she'd been diligently avoiding. Same warm brown eyes, same confident, almost arrogant walk that had once made her heart flutter. But something in his face had changed. A tightness around his mouth, a faint uncertainty in the way his eyes scanned the room before settling on her. The boyish charm was now strained under the weight of being the boss. He froze mid-stride when he saw her. His smile faltered. "Raina," he said softly, as if the name itself was a relic he'd forgotten he owned, carrying a weight he hadn't anticipated. She offered a cool, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Hartwell, a pleasure. We're looking forward to partnering with you." The others in the room, his VP, her junior associates exchanged curious glances. No one spoke. The air was thick with unspoken history. She didn't wait for him to recover. She launched straight into the presentation numbers, market projections, brand identity, demographic analysis. Her voice was clear, confident, never wavering. She was a maestro conducting an orchestra of data and strategy, and the performance was flawless. She was building a fortress of her own competence, and she could see him watching, trying to find a crack, trying to find the heartbroken woman he'd left behind. She gave him nothing. When she finished, the room was silent for a beat too long. Leo cleared his throat, visibly gathering himself. "Impressive," he said, the word sounding forced. She tilted her head, a predator acknowledging its prey. "It should be. At our firm, we don't settle for less than exceptional." For the first time since he had walked out of their apartment, she saw him truly, genuinely unsure of himself. The balance of power had shifted, and he felt it. Over the next few weeks, they had to meet often emails, conference calls, late-night revisions on the campaign visuals. The professional boundaries were firm on her end, but he began to test them. He started making excuses to talk longer, to linger in conversations that had reached their natural conclusion. He'd email her at odd hours with minor questions, clearly fishing for a response. Once, after a draining client dinner that ran late, he offered to walk her to her car. "It's a dark parking garage," he said, a echo of the protective boyfriend he'd once been. She declined with a polite, "I'm perfectly capable, thank you." He persisted, falling into step beside her. The silence between them was heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, as they reached her car, he blurted out, "Do you hate me?" She stopped, key in hand, and looked him dead in the eye. The overhead fluorescent light cast harsh shadows on his face. "No, Leo. I just don't think about you enough to bother." That one landed like a bullet. She saw it hit home, a flinch in his eyes, a slight recoil. He laughed, a hollow, nervous sound, trying to shake it off, but the edge of hurt was obvious. And Raina, calm, precise, colder now than she'd ever been, felt a dark, thrumming satisfaction she wasn't proud of but couldn't and wouldn't deny. Because healing doesn't always look kind. Sometimes it looks like control. Sometimes it looks like watching the person who's shattered. You realize that the pieces have been reforged into something sharper. Meanwhile, cracks started showing in the glossy facade of Leo's perfect new world. Through the industry grapevine, she heard rumors, whispers about Vanessa, that she was seen getting cozy with a famous DJ in Ibiza, that she had a reputation for targeting wealthy, successful men, that she was pressuring Leo for a ring he was suddenly hesitant to give. Other whispers, more worrying, suggested his company's latest project was in financial trouble. Investors were getting nervous, pulling back. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. People talked, especially when they saw the cool, collected woman who was now leading Leo Hartwell's most important campaign. And she allowed herself a small, private, bitter smile when she confirmed that Vanessa had indeed dumped him, very publicly, for a tech billionaire. He showed up at her office 2 weeks later, unannounced and unkempt. There were shadows under his eyes, and his usually crisp shirt was wrinkled. "Raina," he said, his voice rough, "can we talk? Please." She glanced at her watch, a deliberate, dismissive gesture. "You have 5 minutes." He sat down in the chair opposite her desk, looking nothing like the man who had once held her heart in his hands and casually dropped it. "I made a mistake," he said, the words simple and stark. "A huge, stupid mistake, Vanessa. She wasn't what I thought. It was all an illusion. The glamour, the excitement, it was empty. But you were real. You are real." Raina leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. She felt a strange sense of calm, as if she were watching a scene from a movie she'd already seen the ending to. "You told me I wasn't enough, Leo," she stated, her voice even. "I was stupid, blind." "Yeah," she said. Not a question, but a confirmation. "You were." He reached across the desk, his fingers brushing against her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't move either. Her skin was cold, unresponsive. "I miss you," he whispered, the words laden with the desperation that once would have melted her. "Every single day. I miss us." "You miss control," she corrected him, her gaze unwavering. "You miss being worshipped. You miss having someone who arranged her entire life around yours. You don't miss me. You don't even know me." He looked shattered, his shoulders slumping as if the truth was a physical weight. But she didn't flinch. She had cried all her tears for this man months ago, in the silent, suffocating darkness of their empty apartment. Still, something in her stirred that night after he left. Not longing, not a flicker of the old love, but a crystalline clarity. She remembered the years she'd spent making herself small to fit his version of love, turning down a promotion at a rival firm because it would require more travel than he was comfortable with, biting her tongue during political debates with his friends because he didn't like confrontation, loving him harder, cooking more, cleaning more, trying more each time he made her feel like a burden. She had been an accessory to his life, not a partner in it. And now he sat in front of her, his perfect world crumbling, asking for another chance. It almost felt poetic. But Raina wasn't interested in poetry anymore. She was interested in payback. The opportunity for a more sophisticated revenge presented itself sooner than she expected. Leo's firm, desperate to generate positive buzz and attract new investors, proposed a massive joint venture, a complete marketing and branding package, for their new flagship property project, the Apex. It was a multi-million-dollar deal, the kind that could either save his company or be the final, sinking weight that dragged it under. She was assigned as the lead negotiator and project lead. It was the perfect chessboard, and she knew exactly how to move the pieces. Behind her calm, professional smile, she masterfully rewrote the fine print of the contract. She inserted clever, almost invisible clauses that transferred creative ownership and majority credit to her agency. Leo's company would still front the capital, still bear the financial risk, but every success, every headline, every award would name her firm, not his. It was a deal that looked fair on the surface, but was engineered to siphon all the glory, and ultimately, the investor confidence, directly to her. At the final contract meeting, she slid the thick stack of papers across the polished table to him. He frowned as he read, his finger tracing the lines of text. His lawyer, sitting beside him, leaned in and whispered something. Leo's frown deepened. "Raina, this isn't what we discussed. The credit allocation, the intellectual property rights. It's what's best for both sides," she said coolly, interlacing her fingers on the table. "Your company provides the capital and the project. We provide the creative genius and the execution. The risk is shared proportionally. I'll be taking the vast majority of the financial risk," he argued. a hint of his old arrogance surfacing. "And we'll be staking our entire reputation on the creative one," she replied smoothly. "It's balanced. It's fair." He hesitated, his eyes searching her face. She kept her expression neutral, a mask of professional assurance. He was backed into a corner. His investors were impatient. He needed this win, and he needed it to be associated with her firm's rising star. He saw her confidence and mistook it for partnership. He sighed, a sound of resignation. "Fine, I trust you." She almost laughed. The irony was so rich it was almost tangible. "You shouldn't," she said, so softly only he could hear it. He picked up the pen and signed. The campaign for the Apex launched and exploded beyond anyone's expectations. It was bold, innovative, and tapped perfectly into the zeitgeist. There were magazine features, glowing television coverage, national advertising awards. The media ate it up, and every single article, every news segment, credited her agency, Veritas Marketing, for the campaign's brilliance. Raina's face was everywhere, the brilliant, beautiful young mastermind behind the marketing coup of the year. Investors, smelling a winner, poured money into her company. Their stock price soared. Gabriel gave her a staggering bonus and a new corner office. Leo's company, on the other hand, bled quietly in the background. They had spent a fortune, but the plaudits were going elsewhere. The narrative was that Veritas had performed a miracle with a struggling project. The Apex condos sold, but the profits were lean, and the company's reputation was now tied to the genius of an outside firm. Investors, losing confidence in Leo's leadership, began to pull out in earnest. He called again, texted, emailed. Each message was a little more desperate, a little less polished than the last. "Raina, please, can we just talk? Not as client and vendor, as us. You're all I think about. I can't sleep. I'm sorry for everything. For the dinner, for Vanessa, for every time I made you feel small. I was an idiot." She ignored them all. Her silence was a weapon, and she wielded it with precision. Until one day, watching his company's value plummet on a financial news ticker, she picked up the phone. It wasn't out of mercy, it was to end it, to draw a final, uncrossable line. "Raina, please," he said, his voice trembling, stripped of all its former confidence. "I need to see you. Just once." "You already did," she said, her voice like ice. "You saw what you threw away. You had a woman who loved you, who believed in you, and you traded her for a pretty illusion. You saw exactly what you lost." "I'm not that man anymore," he pleaded, a sob catching in his throat. "I've lost everything. The company, it's hanging by a thread. Vanessa sold stories about me to the press. I have nothing left." "Good," she said softly, the word a gentle, lethal dart. "Then maybe you finally know what it feels like." She hung up before he could form a reply, before he could beg again. She sat in her silent, beautiful apartment, the one she'd bought for herself after his departure, and felt nothing for him. No pity, no schadenfreude, just a vast, empty space where his memory used to reside. The weeks that followed were poetic in their cruel symmetry. Her face appeared on the cover of business magazines. Forbes named her one of their women to watch. She was a guest on panels, a speaker at conferences. People in the industry now called her an inspiration, a trailblazer. Leo's company filed for Chapter 11 restructuring. The investors who remained forced him out of the CEO role. Vanessa, in a final act of betrayal, leaked their private messages to a gossip site, painting him as emotionally needy and manipulative. And every time he saw Raina's name on TV or in a headline, he'd send a text, a single, lonely word, "Please." She never replied. Once, they ran into each other accidentally at a charity gala. He looked smaller, thinner, aged a decade in 2 years. His suit hung loosely on his frame. "Raina," he said softly, his eyes drinking her in. She was wearing a gown of deep crimson, and she radiated a power and peace that was utterly alien to him. "You look incredible." "Success looks good on me," she replied, not missing a beat. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice cracking with genuine emotion. "Don't be," she answered, her gaze holding his, allowing him to see the absolute finality in her own. Be reminded. Then she turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the crowd, a ghost at his own feast, surrounded by the echo of his own downfall. She didn't need to destroy him completely. Life, and his own flawed character, were doing it for her. His arrogance, his ego, his insatiable hunger for external validation, everything that once made him seem so untouchable and exciting, was now devouring him piece by piece. But for Raina, the real revenge wasn't in his ruin. It was in her peace. She started traveling, using her newfound wealth and freedom to see the world she'd once only dreamed of. She expanded her firm, opening offices in 2 new countries. She began mentoring young women, bright, talented graduates who'd lost their confidence after bad relationships or early career setbacks. She taught them what she had learned the hard way, that your worth is not negotiable. She built the life, the empire, she once naively begged someone else to build with her. And sometimes, late at night, staring at the city lights from her balcony, she'd think of Leo not with love or even with hate, but with a strange, detached gratitude. Because without his betrayal, without the searing pain of being told she was not enough, she might never have been forced to meet the formidable, fearless version of herself that didn't need saving. She had saved herself. 2 years later, her company won the prestigious Global Impact Award for Marketing Innovation. She stood on the international stage, lights bright and hot, applause rolling over her like thunder. She gave a speech about integrity and branding, and the courage to tell authentic stories. She was grace. She was power. And in the crowd, she saw him, Leo, sitting at a table in the back, clapping softly, his eyes wet with unshed tears. He looked broken, a mere sketch of the man he used to be. She smiled politely, the way you would at a stranger who caught your eye in a crowd. Then she turned away, her gaze sweeping over the adoring audience, claiming her moment. After the ceremony, in the quiet of her luxury hotel suite, she found a note that had been slipped under her door. The handwriting was achingly familiar. You were right. About everything. You were too much for me. Too much integrity. Too much love. Too much realness. I see that now so clearly it's painful. I was a fool chasing a shadow, and I let the sun set on me. I hope you never settle again. I hope you never have to. Leo. She didn't cry. She didn't even sigh. She felt a faint, distant ache for the pain he was in, the empathy one might feel for a tragic character in a novel. She just folded the note neatly, walked to the fireplace, and tossed it into the flames. She watched as the edges curled and blackened, the words turning to smoke and ash. It was the final funeral for what they had been. A few months later, on a work trip to London, she met someone new. His name was Eli. He was an architect, kind-eyed, patient, with a quiet, intelligent humor that snuck up on you. He never made her doubt her worth. He didn't worship her, he challenged her, debated with her, and, most importantly, he respected her. He saw her strength not as a threat, but as an asset. And that, she discovered, was enough. It was more than enough. When he asked about her past over a bottle of wine one evening, she told him the truth, simply, without the sharp edges of bitterness. I was once told I wasn't enough, so I became more. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Guess he was wrong. He was right, she corrected gently, leaning into his side. For him, I wasn't enough. For me, I was always too much. They laughed, and it felt good. Real, steady, unforced. A sound built on a foundation of mutual respect, not desperate need. Years passed. Raina built a life that no longer revolved around proving anything to anyone. Her success became effortless. Her happiness, a quiet, constant hum. She had love. She had purpose. She had peace. But one quiet evening, while scrolling through the news on her tablet, she saw his name trending online again, only this time it was an obituary. Leonard Hartwell, 42, former CEO of Hartwell Development Group, died suddenly of a heart attack. The article noted he had been living quietly, largely out of the public eye, and was survived by no immediate family. She stared at the headline for a long, long time. There was no joy, no relief, no sense of, "I told you so." Just a strange, hollow empathy for a man who never learned that love, like a business, if built on a foundation of ego and illusion, will inevitably collapse under its own weight. He had spent his life chasing more and had ended up with nothing. She closed the browser, whispered a small, futile prayer for the boy he'd once been, and went to bed. The next morning, she woke to sunlight spilling through her windows, the smell of coffee brewing as Eli puttered in the kitchen, the sound of her daughter laughing in the next room, her life still full, overflowing even. And that was her revenge. Not his pain, not his downfall, but her peace, her joy, her unwavering freedom from the need to prove her worth to anyone ever again. Sometimes karma doesn't scream or burn things down in a dramatic blaze. Sometimes it just puts you on a higher floor and lets them watch you rise, until you're so far away you disappear from their view entirely. Raina didn't chase closure. She became it. And somewhere in the lonely, quiet spaces where broken hearts and second chances go, Leo finally understood, too late, that the woman he called not enough was the best thing that had ever happened to him. But by then, she was gone. Gone, but glowing. Gone, but unshaken. Gone, but finally, irrevocably, magnificently whole.